Okay.
Three, two, one.
Welcome everyone to the new TweakTown weekly podcast, which is just a simple beta right now. We're going to be releasing a weekly podcast from now on, which will cover the latest in technology, reviews, and just general news from around the world. So we're just going to run through some introductions of everyone here. My name's Anthony Greffer. I'm the senior news editor and mobile device editor for TweakTown. And we have Charles, Chris, and Paul, all from TweakTown. And we also have a special guest, Jim Handy, who works for Objective Analysis. So we're going to start off with introductions from Charles.
I'm Charles Gant. I'm the East Coast news editor at TweakTown.com.
I'm Chris Ramser. I am the senior storage product reviewer at TweakTown.
And I'm Paul Alcorn. I'm the enterprise storage editor here at TweakTown.
I'm Jim Handy. I'm an industry analyst covering the semiconductor memory and SSD markets.
And then we have me, the most beautiful person here. I'm the senior news editor and mobile device editor of TweakTown. I thought I'd throw that in just as a bit of a joke. So we've been introduced to everyone. We're going to start our podcast covering some of the hottest news from the week. We've had IFA in Berlin, Germany this week, but there's so much that's been covered this week, we're not going to be able to cover it all, so we're going to try and do our best. First up, we're actually going to be talking about the Hynix memory fires that have happened about 30 hours ago. So we've got our special guest, Jim Handy. He's got over 30 years of experience in the industry. We're going to ask him a couple of questions about the memory files themselves and what kind of consequences we could be looking at. And then we're going to pass it over to Chris and Paul, who are going to ask some questions regarding the storage industry and RAM. So Jim, what do you think about the fires? Is it as serious as what we've been reporting? And if it is, what kind of consequences are we looking at over the next 3 to 6 months in the tech industry?
It's a little bit hard to tell. Hynix isn't saying very much at all, and there's an awful lot of other information that's coming at us from all angles on the internet that unfortunately disagrees. Different reports disagree with each other. Some reports say that there was a fire inside the wafer processing fab. There are other reports that say that the fire occurred in a packaging plant, which is an altogether different thing. And the official word from Hynix is that the fire occurred on the roof and only hurt some of the air purification system. If what Hynix is saying is the extent of the damage, and they seem very confident that they'll be able to bring production back up to full speed within a matter of a few days, then there shouldn't be that much of an impact. If we look at the other extreme, and as something's being held back, a fire within a fab can actually do an awful lot to pollute this very, very clean environment and can bring it down to a very low level of output. But I would tend to believe that Hynix wouldn't try to hide something like that because it would come out in the clear pretty darn quickly.
That was going to be my next question, whether they're downplaying the event, trying not to scare consumers and trying not to warn their competitors. But do you think we find out over the next couple of days, like once they start doing an investigation or more news outlets are covering it?
Yeah, Hynix is very much in control of how much news gets out. I'm sure that the people who were posting pictures, who were Hynix employees or anybody who's been tweeting about it, has probably been dragged into a meeting and told that that would be grounds for termination. But that's just my conjecture. Typically that kind of a thing does happen in any company. News is to come from the official sources. However, that said, there are always going to be certain leaks. Now, the problem that viewers are going to have is just trying to understand what to believe and what not to believe. And I think that it is going to be imperative to actually sit tight and just wait, because we are going to be hearing an awful lot of misinformation in the meantime. No matter what, the industry is teetering on a shortage, and this kind of an event is likely to cause people to try to immediately buy up some inventory just in case of the worst case scenario. And what that tends to do is to cause a mild shortage to turn into a very difficult shortage at the drop of a hat.
Absolutely. And I think that would be one of the more dangerous things, is that herd mentality.
Yeah, it goes back to, I don't know, I think it was in the 70s, a television program in the United States, The Tonight Show, was hosted by a comedian, and he started talking about a toilet paper shortage and he actually created a toilet paper shortage during a balanced situation because so many people rushed out and bought extra toilet paper in the United States just to make sure that they didn't get caught in a difficult situation.
Now, Jim, do you happen to know what Hynix makes at that plant or those plants?
The Wuxi fab, and that's how it's pronounced, despite how it looks in print. That fab was originally put in by Hynix and ST Microelectronics as an NAND flash fab, but was later converted over to DRAM. So I believe that most of the production output from that fab is DRAM. There are actually two fabs there, but to the best of my knowledge, only one of them is operational right now. The other one is undergoing a conversion to 300 millimeter from 200 millimeter.
So worst case scenario, let's say that there is not major problems, but say a problem. This would affect large amounts of the industry because of DRAM is in everything from smartphones to gaming consoles. We're on the verge of Xbox One and PlayStation 4 coming out. Can we, if there is a problem, can we expect shortages of products in the next couple of months, especially if something that large, or would Microsoft and Sony have an agreement to have had, the first rollout of products from Hynix?
Not very many people carry any extra inventory of DRAM, and so a shortage would be likely to cause some problems. Let's say that Hynix were shut down for a couple of weeks, which could happen if there were dirt in the fab, but there weren't any very difficult damage. No equipment was actually burned or anything like that. That would cause there to be a couple of weeks worth of shortage, which could be recovered over probably the next 2 months, just by manufacturers ratcheting up their production output. That's likely not to hit Apple or anybody like that because everybody tries to service the big OEMs. But the way that they do that, if they have a shortage of parts, is that they find their least desirable customers and they give them the bad news. And so small module companies that maybe have bad credit are companies that would be the most likely ones to lose their source of supply. And typically those are companies where they drop into and out of the business according to the vagaries of the market. So it would be very likely that you'd find some of the lower tier module manufacturers or even what they call bandit phone manufacturers in China changing what their business model was as a result of this.
Now, I know that Micron recently completed their acquisition of Elpida, making them a very big player in this market, even more so than they were. But were they still running at full capacity with their DRAM production?
Yeah, most of the companies are running pretty close to full capacity right now.
Okay. Now, Chris and Paul, do you guys have any other questions for Jim while we've got him here? Maybe not related to the Hynix files at all.
Sure.
Sure.
Well, Jim, what do you think about the Samsung 3D NAND that they announced just recently?
Okay, for anybody who wasn't aware of that, Samsung about 4 weeks ago, I believe now, just before the MemCon conference in Santa Clara, Silicon Valley, they introduced a new way of making NAND flash, where they basically take a string of NAND bits and they turn it into something vertical like this, with 2 strings of vertical bits. It's a way of getting the chip size to shrink down a lot smaller, and the size of the chip is actually what dictates what the cost of the NAND bits are inside. This is a new approach to manufacturing. It's something that was actually pioneered by Toshiba and first disclosed in 2007. And now Samsung has decided to be the first to actually put it into mass production. It's a very interesting technology. Samsung says that they're putting it into production right away because of the fact that it's so considerably different from the way that NAND flash is made today. I'm watching and waiting to see how well they're able to ramp production volume. But if they are, then it could be a very good way for them to get more NAND flash bits out of existing production capacity.
One thing that struck me about this announcement from Samsung, Jim, was one day they announced that they were, or within a short time span, they announced they were going to switch to 3D NAND production, and then all of a sudden they said they actually have a working SSD and it's implemented already, which that kind of seemed pretty fast. And there haven't been a lot of details that they're releasing about anything about the NAND. They're really not telling anybody anything. Do you think that this ambiguity is kind of indicative of a paper launch or something to where it's more of a marketing ploy?
It's a little bit hard to tell. Samsung has, in the past, been very aggressive about announcing products that haven't been quite ready to ramp into production for a number of months afterwards. And it could be that this is one of those. There is new leadership at Samsung. The gentleman who is actually mostly behind the introduction of a new product every year is no longer running Samsung Electronics, and so it could be that we've got somebody who's more realistic and closer to production. But I think time will tell with that. What's interesting to me is you talk about the 3D NAND being introduced only a week before the SSD with a 3D NAND in it. I find it even more interesting that it was less than a month before the 3D NAND was introduced that an SSD with the 19 nanometer NAND was rolled out. I believe that it was less than a month. And
Yeah, it was the Samsung Global Summit in South Korea.
what do you remember the dates on that?
Chris was
That
there.
Yeah, I was there. It was about a month, maybe 6 weeks at the most.
Well,
So
to my knowledge, that was the first time that 19 nanometer product actually was available in any kind of volume. It was originally announced in November of last year, and then there was another announcement, I believe in March, of another product, both of which were supposed to be in mass production. But I knew some people who, for competitive analysis, wanted to find some 19 nanometer parts who were having problems until that Samsung Summit.
uh,
Well, and they're making like you said, 19 nanometers still pretty new, but it just seems a little strange because 3D NAND is going to have 35,000 PE cycles and 30% less power driving. I think that would upset the market quite a bit if they actually release that right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that the longer endurance, the better life, and also the lower power all come from the fact that this uses a charge trap technology. And charge trap flash is something that a NOR flash company, Spansion, has been making since 2002, and they've been doing a very good job. Most of the product that they ship is charge trap flash. However, there was another company who at the same time was licensing charge trap flash technology to a lot of semiconductor companies. Kimanda, who's no longer with us, SMIC, I believe Panasonic, Macronics, and none of those companies were capable of getting into mass production with charge trap flash. I have spoken with people at Spansion about it, and they say that there are some very difficult problems making charge trap flash work. Once you've conquered those problems, then you can put it into production and really ramp it very quickly. But so far, I'm unaware of any charge trap flash product that Samsung already has. And so it's possible that Samsung is going to have some problems that way too. That said, charge trap is a very nice technology. It does significantly lower the wear sensitivity of flash, and it also significantly lowers the power consumed during write cycles.
huh? Now, Samsung's not the only company with new flash. Micron at Flash Memory Summit showed their 16 nanometer, and then we know SanDisk has 1Y on the horizon. What are your thoughts on the other two?
Um, the uh, the reason Samsung is bringing out 3D NAND, as far as I can tell, is because they did not have a high K dielectric version of NAND flash, and so they were getting to the limit of what conventional pure silicon materials would do for them for shrinking a conventional 2D cell. Both the Toshiba SanDisk joint venture and Micron with the Intel Micron flash technology joint venture both of them have decided that they are going to go with a high K dielectric. This is the tunneling dielectric in the flash. And that allows them to get away from some of the problems that conventional silicon cells have and shrink them significantly further. SanDisk says that they don't believe that a 3D NAND can be made as economical as a 2D NAND using high K dielectric anytime for the next couple of generations. And so they've taken the stance that you have to stay with 2D. You know, that's one company talking against another, so it's a little bit hard to tell. But what you can tell with this is that Samsung has decided that they're not going to go with the high K dielectric. It's kind of a stepping stone over to 3D, and they're just jumping into 3D with both feet right now.
And I noticed they're going up to a much larger size. We're hearing 32 nanometer with 3D NAND. Is that?
Yeah, sorry, you had a question there. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I noticed that Samsung is moving to a much larger, a much larger size with their NAND. We're hearing 32 NAND, but I'm not sure if they've specified that. Is that the actual size they're going to be using?
I believe they did say that at the Flash Memory Summit. The speaker was very candid about what they were doing. It's a whole lot easier to make 32 nanometers than it is to make 20 nanometer using 193 nanometer light. I'm still fascinated that you can use light with a wavelength that large to make features as small as all that. But what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we don't need to make things at the most aggressive process technology because now we're stacking them 16 bits deep. They've got this 24-layer thing. It's got 16 bits per column. And so because of that, they're getting 16 times as dense just by going vertically. And so they can relax an awful lot on what the process is that they're using. And so by using 32 nanometers, then they're cutting themselves some slack while still getting more bits on the same size chip.
It seems like that would also give them an easier path to grow in the future, since they're already down to 19 nanometer with their TLC product. Just start at 32 and then ease your way into the smaller die.
There is one thing that's problematical about 3D and shrinking it from a horizontal standpoint, and the thing is that you've got these very, very narrow channels that are filled with material, and the material that you fill them with actually has to be filled in layers, in concentric circles down inside these tubes or trenches that you're etching into the chip. And the thickness of the coatings has a certain minimum size, and so you can only shrink it down so far before it starts becoming such a big challenge to coat the insides of the trench that you wouldn't be able to make it any smaller. That's something that also would motivate them to use a larger process geometry. I haven't heard anybody stick their necks out and say, okay, we can't possibly make a trench that's any narrower than this because we couldn't coat the walls any thinner than thus and such. But the reason why we're not hearing that is because nobody's in mass production of this product yet.
Very good.
So we're going to finish up there in regards to the Hynix memory fire. I really just have one question. Over the next 5 to 10 years, what excites you in terms of technology? Is it 4K TVs? Is it storage, smartphones? Is there anything that you're excited for that's coming out in the future? Just a general question.
Yeah, I obsess about the components rather than about the end products, and so I look at SSDs and where they're going and where they've been, that kind of stuff. And there was all this talk about the wear of a 3D NAND, but it's just absolutely fascinating to me that the controller designers for SSDs have been able to find ways of going from only being able to use single-level cell flash in a client application to using multi-level cell flash, and then using multi-level cell flash in enterprise applications. And now Samsung has paved the way to go to 3 bits per cell flash for their client SSDs, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that go into the enterprise at some point or another. Just basically, people are really beating their brains. They're adding an awful lot of sophistication to these SSD controllers, and that ends up pushing the prices down because we can use less and less, a lower and lower quality of flash to do that. And you kind of got to say, well, if you say that trajectory is going to continue on forever, what are we going to have? And we're, very likely to have SSDs everywhere using extremely bad quality NAND flash, but still being able to pull 100% good bits out of them. That could lend itself to SSDs finding themselves into more applications. But I'm just kind of charmed by the technology.
Okay.
But Jim, you kind of opened a door there. So at Flash Memory Summit, we talked with LSI, and of course, we've all seen little bits and pieces of what's coming. LSI is really changing. I guess not really changing, but they're expanding on their wear leveling and their error correction. Do you get any thoughts on that? And do you think LSI is kind of leading the charge on their error correction capabilities?
I'm not a good judge of who's got the best error correction technologies, but what I can tell you is that we've seen people go from BCH over to LDPC decoding, and part of what's driving that is that Moore's law is allowing more and more complex controllers to be buried inside the SSD controller. So something that would have been too expensive of a controller before is now becoming significantly cheaper. Now the question is just, how much math do you do to those bits to correct errors that are naturally going to pop up? And like I say, I can't compare LSIs really against anybody else's, but I have heard some big claims from some companies about they're approaching what's called the Shannon limit, the maximum number of bits that can be corrected before theoretically you just completely run out of steam.
I had one more final question. Facebook has been pretty vocal about the fact that they're looking for some very low quality NAND. They're ready to use just about anything to store cold data because of the exponential savings that they'll receive. Have you heard any rumors about who they might be talking with? They said that they are talking with someone, but they're not real specific.
Yeah, they're probably talking with everyone because I think everyone is knocking on their door trying to get in. Yeah. But I couldn't tell you what. It sounds like they would be very likely users of the NAND flash that everybody else rejected because it was just too flaky. I was there for the Facebook keynote, and the gentleman spoke about write once, read never. And I think everybody chortled about that because we run across friends who say, oh, here are 47 pictures of my cat this afternoon. And you're not going to look at all 47 pictures, and you doubt that anybody is going to look at all 47 pictures. But, the person posted them up on Facebook, and so they have to be available. And, he was calling it write once, read never. He could use a very low quality product for that. That could be all he's looking for.
Absolutely.
Wow, a new storage tier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Below USB quality.
One thing, though, if I can just convert over to something else that was at the Flash Memory Summit, which I found a particularly interesting technology, was this thing that Smart Modular was showing called the Ultra DIMM. And this was something where you'd unplug a DRAM DIMM from your PC or your server, probably mostly in a server application, and plug in something that had just a big bunch of flash on it and an ASIC to make that flash look like a DRAM. And then you had to run some kind of program to do further fooling of the system into thinking that it was dealing with DRAM all the time. But you'd effectively expand the size of the DRAM in your server by an order of magnitude. It seemed like it was a pretty good idea. I'll be interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely. I think at one point Intel was talking about moving some flash to the DRAM as well, possibly with Haswell E.
As a matter of fact, they actually mentioned that they're expecting a large move to these types of new, NAND on the DRAM bus technologies in our interview with them as well.
I'm not at all surprised.
True.
Intel has been a big advocate of that for a long time. In 2009, they were about ready to roll out something like that called Braidwood that they killed just before their early 2010 launch. But that's something that's been on their minds, and it's something that makes a lot of sense. Objective Analysis writes these reports, and one report that we wrote, we ran almost 300 benchmarks on PCs that had different amounts of DRAM and different amounts of NAND flash, and found that after a certain level of DRAM was reached, it was 2 gigabytes for most of the benchmarks that we ran, that after that, dollar for dollar, you got a whole lot better performance by adding NAND to the system than by adding DRAM.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
All right.
Jim, before we go, you wanna tell some of the readers what you do over at Objective Analysis and
Sure.
uh,
Objective Analysis is a market research and strategic consulting firm. We try to help companies determine where the market is going and what they should be paying attention to. So we look at the competitive market today, we forecast where the market's going tomorrow, and the way that we forecast the market is by using people with very deep technical experience to understand what the technical issues are that need to be solved and ones that are being solved with new technologies. Our clients, by looking at that and by using very accurate forecasts that we produce, are able to tune the direction that they go, and then they end up doing a better job of competing in the industry than other companies do.
You can visit any of Jim's articles at objective-analysis.com. We'll have a link in that with this post on the main site. Thanks for joining us, Jim. It was really great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and congratulations on the new media here, and I hope it goes very well for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
Starting off with our content for the first podcast, we're going to cover some of the biggest news that was unleashed this week in the tech world, mainly because of IFA that's in Berlin, Germany this week. So we've had a ton of smartphones and tablets and PCs and all sorts of tech unleashed. Some of the standouts, I don't know for me personally, but for the bigger companies like Asus and Samsung, we've got the Galaxy Note 3, we've got the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition, and we've also got Samsung's Galaxy Gear smartwatch, which is one of the first smartwatches in the world from a big company before Apple. We've also got Asus's very impressive ZenBook UX301, which crams in a 2560 by 1440 panel into a 13.3-inch display. That also includes a Core i7 processor into something that small. We saw that at Computex as I think it was the ZenBook Infinity. But obviously it's got the ZenBook UX301 name behind it now. We're going to start off, our first topic is HDMI 2.0, which was announced a couple of days ago. HDMI 2.0 is capable of delivering 4K resolutions at 60 frames a second, as well as including an insane amount of channels for audio, 32 channels. It does a host of other technology as well. We're just going to go around and just talk to everyone about it. So what do you guys think about HDMI 2.0?
Where were you all my life? HDMI 2.0, because I've been waiting forever.
But I tell you what, so literally this week I was planning on buying a new Pioneer receiver to take advantage of 9.2. The point 2 is what I'm looking forward to for the subwoofers. And like the day I was going to buy it, they announced HDMI 2.0, so I immediately stopped in my tracks and just decided to wait. Sorry, Pioneer.
Do we have any word on if the new Xbox and the new PS4 are going to have this?
That's what people are talking about. I think that they might implement that technology if they don't already have it. You would think that companies that size would have been talking to the HDMI licensing group about it. I would say that they'd have a firmware upgrade, just like they did for the previous HDMI, like 1.1 to 1.2, etc. They'd have to do it. They'd be stupid not to with the amount of power that this does. but I think Sony would do it more because of 4K, and they have 4K televisions, where Microsoft might not be, and a lot of their games are only be running at 1080p. They're not concentrating on 4K at all. I really think we'll see GPUs. I'm hoping that we see the 8 series from AMD and the 8 series from Nvidia with HDMI 2.0 support. But I'm hoping they do it. Who knows?
Yes, well, backwards compatibility with a lot of the cabling and stuff like that. That'll.
Yeah. That's going to help. The backwards compatibility is at least, it's good to have that instead of them changing the port for some reason, and then you do have an Xbox One and a PlayStation 4 and they don't have backwards compatibility, and you've got over the years you're going to have 50, 100 million customers that aren't going to have compatibility for it, but we'll see.
I actually heard that it was going to be a software implementation sometime next year. I actually heard that it was probably going to happen at Sony, not at Microsoft, just because, like you said, Microsoft's not really focusing on quality at the moment.
Yeah,
they're focusing more on, speed.
Data mining.
Yeah, increasing the CPU speed by 150 megahertz in the Xbox One, because that's going to help.
One of my friends that is a embedded devices engineer we were talking about this, and he actually said that the reason that Microsoft might not implement it is because of their cloud CPU stuff.
Yeah.
And that right now they'd have to engineer a whole new way to make them link up, I guess, to actually improve that performance.
Well, what I'm curious about is with the cloud, there's been a lot of people hampered from the cloud from metered connections. My ISP limits me to how much bandwidth I get a month. If you have these always-on consoles and a lot of data, they said a lot of this processing will be done remotely, and you would think that would add up.
It very well could.
Just imagine the bandwidth needed to push 32 lossless audio channels. Because I'm
at 60 FPS.
I'm a bandwidth guy, right, from the storage side. So it's just, that's going to be massive.
Unless, again, they could come out with some kind of next generation compression technology, which might help. The cloud can do all the compression on their side because they've got all the power sitting there. They could come out with countless stuff, but consumers aren't going to adopt to 4K straight away. The TVs are $3,000-$4,000 US and above. I think Microsoft and Sony are going to be slow. Just like look at the current generation consoles; they barely do 1080p. They didn't care. 1080p was out, half a decade ago, and they didn't adopt to it. And even with this generation, they're only hitting 1080p at 30 FPS. I really expected 4K. I wrote in countless articles they should have done 4K, but they're not doing it. The Xbox has under 200 gigabytes a second of video bandwidth. That's less than a HD 7950 for $300. So even a PC that you bought 2 years ago is more powerful than a console that's not even released yet. It's ridiculous.
Well,
keeping with the HDMI 2.0 theme, we're going to push off to Analogics, who a couple of days ago unveiled SlimPort Ultra HD. We did a review of SlimPort, which is capable of driving a full HD display from a tablet or a smartphone through a tiny cable, and I actually have one of those here. So through a tiny cable that you can see there, just through the micro USB port on a tablet, it comes out to a full HDMI port. You can plug that directly into your TV, and there's next to no lag because of the technology that Analogics put into that cable. The Ultra HD version can obviously deliver 4K resolutions. So there's a couple of tablets and smartphones that were unveiled during the week that can actually shoot 4K video from the rear camera. That's going to be quite impressive because you'd just be plugging in a micro USB cable directly to a HDMI cable, and with HDMI 2.0, you can be pushing out 4K to a TV through a tiny, tiny, tiny little cable, which is just, to me, it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, Analogics has a lot of really cool technology that they're working on and releasing, obviously. Sorry, I didn't bring props with me today.
I
was prepared.
totally forgot that I even had that. I wasn't even prepared. I just remembered that I've been testing this. I'm like, I'm talking about it. It's right here. I literally forgot until that last second, which was good timing. We're moving on now to Oculus Rift, and maybe not even Oculus Rift anymore, maybe Sony. Both companies are working on a virtual reality headset. We've talked about Oculus Rift in a development kit preview, just a couple of pages that I've had a look at since I've been using it. But we heard news during the week that Sony might be working on a virtual reality headset that will be compatible with the PlayStation 4. And if you can hear us before, we all sound kind of pro Sony right now with the next-gen consoles. If Sony did release a virtual reality headset, it would most likely be locked to the PlayStation 4, not the PlayStation 3 or PC. But it would sell consoles. Having a virtual reality headset for the PlayStation 4 would just sell consoles by itself. They're supposedly going to announce it at the Tokyo Game Show in a couple of weeks' time, and they've got it working with a first party game called Drive Club. What do you guys think? Would you pick up a PlayStation 4 with a virtual reality headset?
I actually think that would be one of the nails in the coffin for the Xbox.
Yep.
That'd be about it. Well, you know, and you look at some of the, like with Google Glass, how small they've made that to where it can project that image out in front of you. I wonder if with Sony's resources, if they can develop something that's really a lot smaller than what we're seeing from Oculus Rift. I think it'd be killer.
Well, Sony have got the HMZ headsets. They announced the HMZ-T3, which is a 720p virtual reality headset. I don't know if you can see my face, but it comes out like the Oculus Rift.
Okay.
But if I think Sony will most likely do it in 720p. But again, like you said, if they can do it small enough and maybe release support for the PS Vita, you know, you can be sitting on a plane playing a PlayStation Vita and having a virtual reality headset on. Oh, I'm bored of my game. I can watch, you know, I can watch the new Transformers movie or Man of Steel or whatever. You're straight on a virtual reality headset. That's the future.
And when you combine that with what, you know, Microsoft announced this week that the IlumaRoom technology is gone. That they say it's too expensive for the consumers. So they have no big display technology coming out now. And I think with the virtual reality stuff from Sony, it's probably the PlayStation 4 is probably about to reign king for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. And after I've only used Oculus Rift for probably 10, 15, 20 hours so far. And for me, I'm a big fan that goes back all the way to 3DFX, to ColecoVision consoles, to so much stuff. And Oculus Rift is the biggest leap in technology that I've ever used. I've used every single screen you can imagine, high resolution, high refresh rates, but that you're teleported to another world. If they can use the game industry and do that and release a horror game, you're literally going to be selling it with a toilet or at least an extra pair of underwear because it will scare you. It really will scare you. It's going to be incredible. I've even picked up this so I can test that. Razer Hydra. There's another toy. See, I'm prepared.
Yeah.
Razer Hydra with Oculus Rift, where I can actually have two joysticks playing with a gun in Half-Life 2. Mouse and keyboard. It's dead. I didn't think I'd say that 6 months ago.
Well, you know, I wrote an article a couple weeks ago about the Rift technology being so convincing that people are leaning on boxes and stuff in the game and falling face first.
Yep.
Or they're trying to, like, when they're like on one knee shooting, they're trying to push themselves back up off whatever they're hiding behind, be it a car or whatever, and they're hurting themselves.
Yeah. Well, in my preview article, I actually thought I'd give my parents a test of it, and I gave it to my mum, and I put her in the Tusky demo, which is one of the first test demos that you get. I put it on, and she was standing up, and she was standing next to a table, and I didn't even think that she would be disorientated. I walked her through the room, and she was just absolutely amazed. Doesn't use a smartphone at all. She has a Facebook account and Spotify. That's all that she uses in terms of technology. And she put it on. She's walking around like, this is amazing. Like, I now know what you've been bragging about for the last 6 months, because obviously I talk about this kind of stuff to her. And I said, oh, I'm going to take you up the stairs now. And I walked up the stairs, and as I went up the stairs, she actually tripped forward because she thought she was going to fall. And I actually had to slow myself down using the mouse and keyboard because she thought she was going to trip over. As I got to the top of the stairs, I looked over the balcony, and she went to instinctively touch the handles of the balcony because she thought she was going to fall. So I thought, oh, it's all right, I'll play around with her. I'll try and trick her. So I started running down the stairs as fast as I could. and she actually thought she was going to trip and fall down the stairs. I know I'm laughing. My mom's going to fall downstairs, but it's virtual reality. It's not real. But it's that immersion level. The immersion you. It's almost like telling someone who's blind what they can see. You can't see it until you do it for yourself. Like Morpheus said in the Matrix, you can't experience it, until you've gone into the Matrix yourself. It's almost like that. It is the closest that you can get to the Matrix. You guys have to try it.
I'm gonna order a kit probably next month.
I'm convinced I have to try it now.
It's worth it, and the graphics in that are low res. I did talk about the screen door effect. It is shocking, but once it moves up to HD, to full HD, it'll be better. But they're using mobile displays, so you're talking about a 7-inch 720p display. They're moving up to 7-inch 1080p, but once they go to 7-inch 4K, which is what we're seeing on tablets and stuff coming out in the future, once you've got 4K, there'll be no screen door. You'll just be looking at something that is so ultra clear. It will just if you were to put a camera on the front of it and record what's in front of you and then view what's in front of you, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference between real life and virtual reality, which is when things will get scary.
Now, Anthony, you've talked about screen door before. Can you kind of explain what that is to?
Yeah, if you can imagine, it's like black squares in front of you. So if you were to walk up to a fly screen on your window and put your face right up to it, you would see black squares constantly across. So you see every individual pixel. So when the pixels are lit, so say you've got say you're looking outside and you're looking at the sky and the sky is blue, you'll see on the actual development kit, you'll see the sky that is blue, but because your eyes are so close to the screen, you'll actually see every single black square pixel. So that's what generally everyone calls the screen door effect.
It's kind of like on the old CRT monitors and TVs. If you got really close, you would see the individual pixel. Like if you were cleaning your screen with some window cleaner, the bubbles would magnify the pixels and you could see the individual pixels.
Yeah.
And you can still even get that on a full HD panel. I've got a Samsung 55-inch smart TV, and if I sit close enough to that, you can see the pixels. But because you've got a 7-inch tablet screen, which is centimeters away from, or an inch away from your face, it's noticeable. But like I said in the preview, it is a development kit. It's very early. I can't judge it on that because they've already said that the consumer edition will be at least 1080p.
Very good. At least 1080p.
At least 1080p. I'm thinking that the consumer edition will be 1080p, and then we'll see Gen 2 or Gen 3 of Rift will be 4K. That's where I see it going. Once it gets to 4K, I think the consumer edition will be enough. It'll be enough to tease everyone. Like, here we go. This is virtual reality. But I think if they've got Sony on their heels, they're going to have to push. So if I was Oculus VR, I'd be pushing for two versions. I'd be pushing for a $399 consumer edition, which is 1080p, and I'd be pushing for a high-end version, which is maybe $599 or $699 that offers 4K. So if you've got a PC that can push 4K, you've obviously got a PC that's powerful enough that's maybe worth $2,000 or $3,000. You're not going to go for the 1080p version. You're going to go straight up to 4K. It's the same as if you've got a high-res monitor. Let's say 3 2560 by 4040 panels, you're not going to run that off of a single 7770. You're going to have 2 or 3 GTX 780s or 2 or 3 HD 7970s. But we'll see. They're not talking about any release until at least the second half of next year, so we're a long way off yet. So we're going to move on to Xbox One. Which has been announced that it will not be supporting external storage at launch, which I think is a really big problem for the Xbox. What do you guys think? Do you guys use storage on consoles?
Yet another problem with the Xbox.
Every PlayStation, and we've got 4 in the house, every PlayStation 3 was eventually upgraded storage-wise. I'm not sure how many gigabytes they plan to throw in there. Remember, PlayStation 3, we have the original versions, which were 60 gig, I believe. So, they now have like 500 gig plus SSDs on them. Yay for storage.
The big problem is going to be is that the games are getting bigger. These games are going to be 1080p by default. So the games are going to be bigger. Most people are going to be installing the game. So if you buy let's say 5 titles at launch, and maybe they're 10, 15 gig installs each, you're burning through 100, 150 gig on day one. You know, you download some videos, you buy 5 more games in 3 months. There's 400 gig gone. So 500 gig default hard drive. You're going to go through that pretty quick. No external launch. Yes, maybe not at launch, but Microsoft have Windows 8 running on it. It's a version of Windows 8. I truly don't understand how a company the size of Microsoft, with the power that they have, cannot put support in for an external hard drive on a Windows-based machine. That's like buying a laptop and Lenovo or Samsung going, oh, sorry guys, we don't support external storage. But 3 months from now, we'll give you a firmware update.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen. I think 3-4 months now, when people are starting to fill up, they're going to release that external hard drive that's going to cost you $200-$300.
That's what I was thinking. You're looking at a proprietary solution that's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
See, on the race simulation side, Microsoft kind of shot themselves in the foot with the Xbox 360 because you had to run one of their official wheels and pedal sets, and they were just absolutely awful compared to the high-end Thrustmaster, the TS500, and the Fantex and stuff like that. So it was, for me personally, because that's about the only game I play anymore is sim racing. That was a deal breaker. So no Forza for me because you need a wheel that doesn't suck.
And so I'm hoping Microsoft, if they go down the proprietary road with an external storage device, it's only going to hurt them because it's going to give Sony the advantage of going, well, hey guys, you can use any hard drive on our console, we don't mind, and you can go and buy a 1 terabyte USB 2 powered drive for $100, where Microsoft will go, we'll sell you the same thing for $350. That's Apple mentality, and Microsoft are trying too much right now to be like that. And with the amount of hurt that they've seen in the market against Sony, pre-orders are killing them. Microsoft have changed their stance on the always on recording Kinect. It's like they're making mistakes and hoping that people will just go, oh, that's okay. But then when something big happens, they say no. So it's almost like the consumer backlash against Kinect was big enough for them to say, oh, sorry, we're not going to do that. But the consumer backlash against the external storage is nothing, so they leave it. Oh, we'll just do a firmware update. Do you guys think that maybe it's part of Steve Ballmer? Like, how much control did he have of this? Like, he's just announced his retirement. He's announced that his biggest regret as CEO was Vista. Like, do you think that maybe the Xbox One's going to be a bigger regret than Vista? There's more money in Xbox One than there is in Vista.
I don't think it'll be that much of a failure. I don't think that it would be that much of a failure, but
not that much of a failure, but just in terms of giving. Think about it. Is there going to be another console in 5 years? Mobile devices are that powerful now that we're talking 4K 60 FPS within 2 years. 2 years. We're already at 1080p 60 FPS now on a tablet. And Oculus VR have already talked about we're going to have it working with tablets. Oculus Rift is going to work with tablets and smartphones. So you're just going to be able to plug up to your smartphone one day and have virtual reality. Xbox controllers and Kinect are gone. That's what I mean is maybe long-term are Microsoft hurting their prospects of consoles versus Sony seem to be doing everything right this time, where last time they kind of failed against the 360, where now it seems like the PS4 is the console of choice.
What do you think about the 150 megahertz overclock on the Xbox One they just announced?
Last minute scrape of trying to help.
Do you think it's going to make a difference?
No.
In image quality and speed?
No. I think that they got to mass production, and I reckon that their engineers said, look, we've got a little bit of juice that we can squeeze out. Should we, shan't we? Done. Let's do it.
And then their marketing department took it and just ran with it.
Yep. Because really, at the end of the day, nearly 10% improvement in CPU speed isn't going to help because most of the games are done on GPU. So a CPU speed increase, to me, I don't think it's going to do that much.
Are we going to see another red ring of death with this
over
5 years?
Here's your
question.
Here's your 150 megahertz, and
a red ring of death.
It ends your product life a lot sooner.
I think Microsoft are not going to want that to happen. But I think because now it's all x86 architecture, I think that they're going to escape a lot of those issues. A lot of that was because it was proprietary tech, Now it's all x86 AMD, APUs. I think a lot of those issues are going to disappear. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near the failure rates of any previous Microsoft or Sony console because of that fact alone.
Now, if we could just have Gran Turismo on launch for PlayStation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that they're failing with the launch titles as well. Like, I really would have expected a new Halo game. I really would have expected Grand Theft Auto 5 as a launch title. Grand Theft Auto 5 is only going to be on current generation consoles, according to Rockstar so far. There's this huge multi-billion-dollar franchises that aren't even launching new games. Battlefield 4 is probably the only big one. That's it.
Speaking of the games, we all know that PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are about as powerful as a mainstream video card right now. A mainstream gaming video card.
Yeah. Yep.
How bad is this going to hurt PC gamers? Because the developers are going to develop for both, and
well, I think if they're architecting for x86, I think the ports can be a little more direct, and maybe there'll be a little bit more room for improvement with gameplay on computers that have more power on home user systems and things like that.
I think Paul's right. Like that, it'll help. I think the biggest problem that we have now is something that I've always complained about is controllers. They create these games on a PC, even for current generation consoles. The games are created on PCs, and then they're made to be used on a controller at a certain distance from the TV at a certain field of view. So if I'm playing Quake 3 from years ago, I could change the field of view to, say, 100. But games now are 60. So you see your gun, for example, in a first-person shooter is X distance away from you, because they actually physically build the game from the ground up for you to be sitting in front of a TV. They don't allow for mouse and keyboard controls. So the problem is going to be, it's going to come down to input. If you're running a 1080p game, it's going to feel in the game different to what it will on a PC unless you get field of view adjustments. In terms of hardware, AMD and that are pushing 4K. Consoles don't do 4K. So even if you have a game that's on PC from a console, it's going to have 1080p resolution with textures that are made for 1080p. They're not going to stretch out well to 4K. That's I don't know. I think we'll see more games like Paul said. Port them over will be really easy, and they'll be much better quality than what they have been previously. But for the future of PC, let's talk 5 generations from now. GPUs are going to be at half a terabyte a second in bandwidth. Consoles are only at 150, 180 gigabytes a second. So you're going to have a single card that can do 3 times the power of the Xbox One. But then if you do 3 or 4-way GPUs, where is the enthusiast going to be? Running multiple monitors? The games aren't designed for that. The enthusiast PC gamer has been thrown to the side for a very long time. But that's me. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's sad. Given the hardware specs that have came out, will the new consoles even be able to run Crysis like the original Crysis in its original form?
That's a good question. I'm wondering if they will run Crysis.
That's actually, I would love to see Crytek come out and actually go. That'd be good marketing, Yes, the Xbox One does play Crysis.
Does run Crysis.
Yeah, that's actually something we should do. We should actually get an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4 and put Crysis on it.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, it's x86.
Exactly.
It's Windows 8.
How's the mods going to come? Because I'm sure Microsoft will put, some kind of crazy chip in there that makes it so we can't install Windows or Linux. But, we all know that those fail. Within 6 months, someone will have, a chip that you solder 5 wires to and use a coat hanger to, hang it upside down. And it makes it work.
The big problem that they're going to have this time is that's why both companies, Microsoft and Sony, are pushing a lot of the online validation for games. Yes. So this time round, it's going to be I'm not even going to use the word way harder. It's going to be impossible, because any game that you want to activate has to be done through Microsoft servers. Any game you want to activate on a PlayStation 4 has to be activated through Sony servers. That's where I believe Valve are going to come through next year. I truly believe Valve are going to release Steambox next year. I'm hoping that they have Half-Life 3 as an exclusive. And then, but they've talked about you will be able to install Windows, you will be able to install Linux, and that's why you're seeing Steam move onto Linux now, because they're moving away from Windows. So if they do that, you're going to be able to buy a console for maybe $399, $499. Install Windows on it, install Linux on it, and you've got Steam. You've got hundreds and hundreds or thousands of games, and they have massive sales that they do, like the Steam Summer sales. They're huge sales. If they can do that and go, hey guys, you can run Windows 8, you can play games. You can run Linux, you can play games. You can hack it, because if it can run dual operating systems, that's going to be... Microsoft and Sony can't compete with that, period. They cannot compete with that.
And the big thing about the Steam box, it's going to be backward compatible with every game you have in your Steam library. And like I have like 150 games in my Steam library, and to be able to buy it for $499, sit down and play 150 different games without having to spend another dime is a huge advantage over Xbox One and PlayStation 4.
Yep. And they're both not backwards compatible. That's a big shot in the foot that Microsoft and Sony did to themselves. They've announced these next-gen consoles. And, if you imagine as a family, you've got kids like Chris. You've said how many PlayStations you've got. If your sons wanted to buy a PlayStation 4, all your games that you've invested in, that's an investment. That is a physical investment. You've spent maybe thousands of dollars on games. Throw them away. That's it. Or you're going to have two consoles. You're going to have PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 hooked up at the same time. But if you buy a Steam box and you've got Quake 1, 2, 3, Doom, all the way through to brand new games, Battlefield 4, they're all going to work. That's why you're seeing different distribution platforms being laid out. Origin are trying to put their foot down with EA with Origin. They're trying to put their foot down with Battlefield 4 and The Sims and stuff on their own digital distribution network. But then those games aren't being made available for Steam. So that's where Valve are going to have an issue where even if they do release a Steam box, it's going to have to be so big that they have all developers on board. So you're going to have Valve talking to EA going, you have to choose us or Microsoft and Sony. So you're going to have these huge business relationships, these huge multi-billion-dollar companies. They're going to have big problems dealing games between each platform. But the consumer has to come first, and that's what Valve do. Valve look at the consumer and give them what they want. Where Microsoft and Sony kind of, it's like they make it up as they go along. It's only like, look at the last couple of months. Microsoft are really making the Xbox One right up until a couple of months ago. All of their policies and stuff have been changing. That's a huge thing for a company of the size of Microsoft to be last minute kind of, deals. Strange. We'll move on to IFA content. We've had tons and tons of devices in the last couple of weeks. Before we even get into IFA, just before the event kicked off in Berlin, we had a tease of Android 4.4, which is being known as KitKat. That's going to be unleashed in the next couple of months. I'm hoping that it gets unveiled properly on a new Nexus smartphone. We had a tease of the Nexus 5 when Google announced, Google did the promotional video for Android 4.4. And they had a side-by-side shot that we actually posted a news article about, where they had a lady that was holding a Nexus 4 in landscape, taking a photo, and then there was someone next to her that was holding a slightly larger phone that had Nexus branding horizontally, and they were also taking a photo. That, rumor has it, is the Nexus 5, which would be which is close to the LG G2 smartphone, which would most likely have a full HD display, probably Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 SoC, so it'd be super fast. It'd most likely be capable of 4K recording, but that's just before IFA. And then at about the same time as that, Microsoft announced that they were scooping up Nokia's services and devices division, which Charles covered pretty much seconds after it happened. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about the future of Microsoft and Nokia now?
Well, to start, I think that the deal happened a long time ago. I think it happened back in 2010, and this has been kind of the plan all along, to inject him into the company, convince Nokia to switch exclusively over to Windows 8 for their phones, and then once they were stuck to where they were tied with Windows for a very long time, Windows would swoop in and take over. And as crazy as that sounds, I think it might be crazy enough to be true.
Okay, so where do you see Microsoft, or maybe even both companies, where do you see Microsoft and Nokia and the entire Windows Phone platform in 12 months' time?
Well, so they didn't get the Nokia name in the licensing deal. So we will not ever see a Nokia, after probably the next two phones that come out after that, we won't see another Nokia branded phone. And Ballmer has actually said in a statement that he thinks that Microsoft can do a much better job at naming, the upcoming Windows phones. So I think we're going to see the phones just go simply to a Windows Phone name, just simply Windows Phone. It's kind of scary to think that they might resurrect the Zune name. That's actually terrifying. But,
yeah, I don't think that they would resurrect the Zune name. I sure hope not.
No.
I think that maybe in the next 8 to 10 months we will see a new flagship phone released that will replace, probably not the Nokia 1020, but maybe we might see a new phablet come out.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that Microsoft might use the acquisition to maybe treat themselves like Google with the Nexus branding, if you know what I mean, and maybe use the Nokia Devices and Services division to actually release like a Nexus-like phone, because then it'll bring them up to the same kind of level as obviously Google with Nexus and then Apple with iOS.
Yes.
I think Microsoft saw that none of their partners really had any faith because Google were just absolutely killing them. Google are even starting to hurt Apple a lot. And I think Microsoft is seeing this, I see it as their last chance in the mobile space. Google, they've even got probably 5 years before they even touch Google. And in between now and then, that means that Google has to go down. That means that Google has to lose customers for Microsoft to gain customers. Customers don't just come out of thin air now. They have to start taking them away. So Microsoft, the only way that they can start doing that is by being competitive. If I can go out and buy a Nexus 4 smartphone right now for $199, Apple's iPhone 5 is $500 more than that. Microsoft need to be in the middle. They need to be either cheaper than Google and do a flagship smartphone, $299, or they need to release something that is truly, truly next generation. Maybe they can do that, but I see a very long and treacherous path for Microsoft.
Well, I think if Microsoft really wants to succeed, what they need to do is go after the emerging markets. The cell phone, the smartphone market in the U.S. is actually declining somewhat. The rate that they're selling phones because everyone has one. In the developing countries, the smaller, cheaper phones, you could sell 100 million of them, and they just have to be priced right and have the right type of features. I think if Microsoft really goes aggressively after emerging markets, I think that they can, maybe make a dent there. That'll probably be their saving grace if they're smart enough to do that. Because with Samsung, a lot of their cheaper phones, and they have such a wide range, they're really dominating in developing countries right now.
Yeah, there's a few companies that make slower cell phones specifically for emerging markets. So I don't think Microsoft is going to, I hate to use the word arrogant, but everyone's nodding. Microsoft, I don't think they're gonna try and do that because they want to appear to be a flagship brand. They don't want to come out and say, we're under Apple. We don't want to price under Apple. We want to price level with Apple or even higher. So
well, but that's the problem with Apple is they're not really getting the uptake in these emerging markets. That's why Samsung's kind of going in and stealing all the cookies there.
And that's why you're also seeing Apple announce the iPhone 5C in a couple of days because the people want a cheap phone. And like you said, and I actually think that's a good point, is that the emerging markets are huge. Like people think that India and Asia are worth nothing, but if you sell, like you said, 100 million units at $50 profit each, that's a huge start for them. They can go, well, hey, look, we're the number one in India. We're the number one in Asia. They're the two biggest markets in the world. Like they don't need to, for them to fight against Apple, Google, Samsung, Motorola, or Google and Motorola. It's too hard. But in emerging markets, like you said, Samsung have a huge range. They have phones from $20 right up to the Galaxy Note 3 now, that $800-900. They sell phones to everyone.
And who's going to get that significant penetration into a major country like China with several, billion people.
Yep.
I think those are the key markets right now. I think if they can figure out how to make a cheap device that they can pull some profit off of and hit those markets.
Well,
Microsoft has the
have
reach. They have more reach
and,
than anybody. Their distribution channels are huge.
and they have the money behind them to kind of take a hit for a while. They might take a couple of $1 billion over 2 or 3 years, but if that's gonna win them the war in emerging markets, I think Microsoft are thinking in that old corporate way where we can do it, but they can't. You can't fight against Google. Google have powerful services now with Gmail and Drive and Google Now and Search. Microsoft cannot compete with that. Apple can't even compete with that. I think if Microsoft were going to do anything, they really need to nail it. They need to nail it first time. If they come out and release a phone that is just a meh phone and they just go, here it is, and it doesn't sell, that's it. The acquisition of Nokia's devices and services was a waste. Windows Phone is gone, and then you're going to start to see the deterioration of Windows. Windows has no competition.
And you look at it, right now it's all about market share for Microsoft with their Windows Phone. I think the last numbers I seen on it were, I don't remember how low they were, but the percentage was insanely low compared to everyone else.
A single digit.
So,
yeah.
Getting a wider base, that's key.
Yeah. Well, they need that.
So, what do you think about Ballmer leaving and Elop taking the throne? How do you feel about that?
I don't know anything about the new guy, so.
He was an exec at Microsoft before he was the head of Nokia, and
yeah, and it seems kind of funny. A lot of people are saying that they just bought Nokia and they paid several $1 billion just to get their next CEO, but it is kind of odd that he already came from Microsoft. I mean,
yes. Well, that's
already been there.
That's where I hit on that. This was planned out a long time ago. It's kind of a conspiracy theory, but what if Ballmer and Elop and the Microsoft board sat down, back in 2010 or 2009 and said, hey, we're going to inject you into Nokia. You're going to do our bidding for the next couple years, and once the price is right, we're going to buy it. You're going to come back, and Ballmer's going to retire, and you can have the throne.
Well, there's been similar tactics like that used in all types of industries. In SSDs, we've seen OCZ publicly said they wanted to buy Indelinks, but they were worth too much. So they stopped using Indelinks cheap chips in their SSDs, and a few years later, Indelinks was cheap because OCZ cut them off, and OCZ bought them. So I mean, you can't put anything past these corporations. I don't know if I'd go on record saying that's what happened, but would it surprise me? Probably not.
Well, I think maybe one of the biggest moves that we're probably about to see happen is BlackBerry gets sold.
Yep.
Well, they've got to do something. They're not getting the uptake.
Well, I wrote an article yesterday that the Wall Street Journal actually covered it. BlackBerry's fast-tracking their auction process. They've already got a few buyers that's looking at them. They won't say who, but I think those few buyers are Apple and Samsung. I think that with the recent, news that Samsung is the first to bring BlackBerry Messenger to Android, they'll be months ahead of everyone before the rest of the Android market gets BlackBerry Messenger. I think they're probably the highest contender, and what they're going to do, either them or Apple, they're going to take and strip away all the handset business and just throw it away, and we will see them port over the enterprise stuff to either iOS or Samsung's version of Android, and they're going to lead the way. They're just going to take the entire enterprise market by storm.
Well, see, if you remember back to a couple of months ago, Samsung are working on that Tizen operating system. So that'd be the perfect acquisition is to pull in BlackBerry, like you said, strip them apart, use what they need, throw the rest away, or sell the rest away. And then for Tizen, because Samsung's biggest issue right now is fighting with Google because of Android. They are having to rely on Google too much, and Google are seeing Samsung see huge success with it based on Android devices, and Google don't like that. So Samsung are going to move off to Tizen. They could eventually sell Tizen as maybe an enterprise device. This is a more secure operating system. It's not based off of Android. It's based off of Linux. And we're also using, BlackBerry's enterprise side, BlackBerry software. That could be big for Samsung. That's, again, a new market they can step into. Samsung recently reported that they've been winning defense contracts along with Apple. So they're selling Android devices to, Department of Defense and military and stuff like that in the United States. That's huge. If they can start saying, well, hey, we've just acquired BlackBerry and we're putting in BlackBerry security, BlackBerry everything, mixed with a completely secure operating system, that's a huge coup for Samsung. Like, massive, massive thing.
I'm willing to bet that's what's going to happen. It seems like a pretty safe bet to me.
I think we're going to see some big moves. I think 2014 is going to be a year for Samsung to maybe even shift away from their not reliance on Android, but maybe we see them shift into two companies where one concentrates on Android, one concentrates on Tizen and smart TVs and consumer products.
So. Do you, just real quick, I know we have to move on, do you think that they're going to overtake Apple as the most profitable company in the world?
I think so. I think that would happen very soon. We've got a few days from September 10 event for Apple. Apple need to do something drastic because they're bleeding nearly 10 million customers a quarter directly to Samsung. 9.5 million of those customers are going to Samsung.
Yes.
That's a huge, Apple should be very worried. They've just bled out, $250 billion from their market cap. We were one of the first starts to report on that. That should be worldwide news. No one talked about it. Everyone said that it was something that wasn't gonna continue to slide, and it slid. Day by day, they were just losing billions of dollars. Apple are almost doing what Microsoft and Nokia have been doing over the last couple of years, and stale. Keeping their current consumers. Nokia haven't released anything that's really impressed anyone, where Samsung seems to be the new force that goes, here's the Galaxy S3, everyone wants one. Here's the Galaxy S4, I'm going to upgrade or I want one. Here's the Galaxy S5, and they're getting that same almost religious cult-like following that Apple had with after the first generation iPhone, where everyone wanted it. If you had an iPhone, first generation iPhone, you upgraded to the 3G. You didn't care if you had to kill 1,000 people, you wanted the new phone. 3GS comes out, you want it. 4 comes out, you want it. And 4S comes out, you want it. 5 came out, and everyone was like, I don't know if I want this. And now everyone's saying, well, the 5S is going to have a fingerprint scanner. That's not an exclusive feature they can push on a smartphone. So maybe Samsung, I see Samsung overtaking, and I see Google coming up to be maybe number 2 with Apple, pushing the Nexus brand. If they can push their Nexus brand and do something like $299, $399, Apple have finished.
I see Apple sliding as well. For a company that is supposedly about customer choice, they only have 3 phones, or
That's right.
they have a very limited range of options for customers, and it's almost like they stick to that regardless of what the market says. Look, they don't have a phablet. That's really hot right now. They don't have a real cheap phone. It's almost like they're refusing, in the face of these market trends, to adapt, and they're almost dictating to people what they need. And that's kind of counter against what they're all about, supposedly. So
years ago that they said that they were the anti-Microsoft, and they didn't like Microsoft's corporate strategy and corporate kind of idea. And they were the ones that said we're for the people. They were kind of anti-Microsoft, and they've turned into Microsoft in a way by being the dictator and saying, we have an $899 smartphone. You are going to buy this. We won't release a cheap smartphone because if you want one of those, you're not our customer. You can go and buy it from Samsung. We're going to release an iPad. That was an amazing tablet, and it still is to this day. But the iPad Mini has failed. The iPad Mini is too expensive. It's kind of like that's our phablet, but it has a 1024 by 768 display. That's really pathetic. The refresh Nexus 7 has a 1920 by 1200 display, and it's $249. That's how you sell a device. Apple, they really do dictate what you should buy, and that's where you're seeing the iPhone 5C come in. That's their way of going, oh crap, we need to sell a device cheap, and we need to do it now. A company that said that they would never sell a plastic-built device, the iPhone C is made of plastic. So we'll see how that goes in the next couple of weeks.
That's a big point that, Steve Jobs always said that he will never make a plastic iPhone. And the market share fell off, and the first thing they do is develop a plastic iPhone.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have that type of rigidity. You can't, limit yourself like that. That's probably a poor statement on his part.
Yes.
So did we ever hear anything if the rumors are true on the gold iPhone? Like,
Yes, it's
Yeah, they had that on Hollywood on some movie premieres. There was someone that was showing off like a red iPhone and a gold iPhone, but maybe that's just limited to people who have, bags and bags of money.
um,
Yeah. Movie stars.
Yeah,
well,
yeah, because really gold is expensive. You make a gold iPhone, what's it going to be, like $50,000 on contract for 10 years?
well,
That's
what's wound up happening, I think, is the so-called gold iPhone is actually just anodized yellow.
yeah,
Anodized
that's
blue.
it.
There's been
that
numerous
makes
links.
sense.
There's been numerous links. I've posted at least 15 of them myself about the gold iPhone, and there's been videos of people doing scratch tests and torture tests, and they're throwing them in bags with keys, and they're throwing them on the ground and stabbing them with knives. And the only thing that it's an iPhone 5 case that's been anodized gold instead of white or black. That's it. There's nothing different.
That doesn't sound like an Apple move. They would only make devices of quality.
And there's like no, I posted 3 or 4 weeks ago. I posted a video that somebody shot of them taking a knife, a pocket knife, and they just hacked at the back of it and just went at it, and then they did it to a black iPhone 5, like a current production model, and there's no difference in the wear. It's the same thing. They just threw it in a different color dye after the anodization process was over. That's it.
You want to know what's funny? Like, if it's aluminum, just take a magnet to it and see if it sticks or not. You don't have to hack your iPhone.
Maybe we can do that when it comes out. Instead of doing a blend test, we could do a magnet test.
There you go. Or a hammer test is what I would do to an iPhone.
A hammer test would be nice.
I actually posted a video.
I'm on Samsung, so.
I actually posted a video earlier today as part of the news, and it was kind of just a comedy post. A group of guys took an NVIDIA shield, and they drilled some holes in it and shoved it full of explosives, and they shot it with an HD like a HD high frame per second camera, and they labeled the parts as they were flying off from the explosion. So maybe we can get Apple to send us one, and we'll stuff it full of C4 and see what happens.
I would even like to just buy it myself and do that, just to see it explode.
Or maybe Chris. Go ahead. Sorry.
We're gonna move on to the two Samsung devices, the two biggest devices that were unveiled by Samsung at IFA. They unveiled the Galaxy Note 3 and the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition. Starting with the Galaxy Note 3, they moved from the 5.5-inch display to a 5.7-inch display, so slightly bigger. But they're talking about using better build materials with the Galaxy Note 3. So here's hoping to a non-plastic Note 3 that might have a better backing, which is what the Galaxy S5 is rumored to have. Secondly, there was a Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition, which has a 2560 by 1440 display, I think. And that's obviously 10.1 inch. That will have a new SoC inside of it. What do you guys think? Are you guys going to pick up the new Galaxy Note 3 or the new slate from them?
I'm going to get the Galaxy Note 3 because I have the 2. And, even when it's plastic, I've got a great case on there. I've never had any issues with it. It's light, it's thin, it's big, it's great.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk about it because I paid full price for mine. And
it is expensive.
And I told myself I'm not going to get into the phone market and go from one phone to the other to the other to the other. And I said that I wasn't going to get a Note 3 unless it had a killer feature on it. And then, of course, what do? They come out and they say, hey, look, we got 4K video. So, and you guys are on my Facebook, you know that one of my favorite pastimes is going to concerts and, sitting in the front row or, the first couple rows. And I always shoot video and post it straight to Facebook. So 4K video, I don't know, it might be enough to make me fork over $800 again, whatever it was.
That might take a while to post to Facebook, 4K video.
Yeah.
It's going to be big. I mean, that's a thought I've been having lately. We see all these cameras coming out with these ridiculous sizes, megapixels on their cameras. It's like, wow, all of my photos sync automatically to Dropbox. If I was taking those huge photos, it's gonna chew up some serious bandwidth.
Well, imagine 4K 60 FPS like Chris is doing that from a concert. Even for 3 minutes, it's going to be like 10 gig.
Yeah,
like that's...
and if you have something like Dropbox or something, you're just going to chew through.
No.
Yeah, but you know what?
That's
why I'm grandfathered in. I'm grandfathered in on that unlimited, and I have to make up for that $200 we spend a month, my wife and I, to keep that. So go ahead and bring on that 4K video. Actually, now that we brought that up and what I've been spending compared to what I actually use, I'll probably get it just so I could go and stick it back to Verizon with my 10 gig per 3 minute videos.
I probably won't pick it up. I just bought the best phone in the world. The HTC One.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best. Everybody agrees it's the best Android phone ever made, and it fits. It's almost to that too big in my hand point, so I don't think I want a phablet. I'm pretty happy with that.
See, a phablet, I think that's where the size comes into play. Is 4.5 inches is perfect. Anything over, it's a phablet, and then you can go straight up to tablets. Like I've got that's the 2013 Nexus. Even that, I can hold in one hand. Like if I really wanted to, I could talk on it. I would look like a complete tool out in public holding something that big in front of me.
It would look awesome, is what you would look like.
Yeah. I would be like, this is equal to something else, but I can't talk about it on camera because it's PG-13, but whatever. But it's getting to that point where these devices are getting big, like to me, a 5-something inch device. But then for us, we're always on tech. You want to have a nice screen. That's what I actually use a Nexus 7 more than I do my Nexus 4 because I'm always on my lounge or laying in bed, and I just use a 7-inch tablet. I can use it,
I have the original Nexus 7, and I actually use it more than I do my 10-inch Toshiba tablet, just because I can hold it in one hand.
Yep.
And it's light. It does. If you're laying in bed like you said, and you're holding it in one hand above your head, you don't get fatigued as fast. And it's just an all-around nice device.
You need to get a new Nexus. The new Nexus 7 compared to the old one, it is a lot thinner. It's a lot lighter. I don't know if you can tell that much on there, but it's actually like you can actually see it even on a crappy webcam. It's actually like a fair bit thinner, and it is lighter. It feels better to hold. It's just improvements in all aspects.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a review on that next week. But it is nice. I will buy a 10-inch tablet though for Battlefield 4. That does the second screen. That's what I've got a little space set away next to my monitor for it. Second screen, so I can run my little commander mode.
I actually ordered a stand for mine the other day just for that purpose.
Preparation. That's good.
Yes.
See, preparing for it.
Yes.
Yeah. See, you guys were talking about the size, and Paul had his Note 2 before I had mine, and we were going to a show somewhere. I don't know. We've been to many shows. But everything before that, I said, that thing is just huge. It's going to be awful to use and talk on and put in your pocket. But you know what? It was like love at first sight.
Yeah.
Paul's phone and me. And as soon as I got back, I had to go pick one up because it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, and it actually turned out to be amazing.
And a lot of people asked me when I first got it, they're like, how does that even fit in your pocket? Really, it fits in your pocket. I mean, unless you're like a really small person. I'm a tall guy, so I probably have bigger pockets than most people, and I have big hands, but I still think phablets are awesome. And we can use it as a wireless hub when we travel, and you can hook 10 devices up to it. So we can never get internet in these hotels and everything when we're doing shows. Try and get an internet connection at CES. so having 4G and everybody can connect their laptops in and stuff like that, and they're just good phones. I like it.
It's kind of the running joke that the biggest tech conference in the world can't keep good internet going.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's horrible. How can you write? You can't do anything.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing with that's why I find it really hard to review mobile devices. Is that every single person has a different opinion. It's like eating food or fashion. Like if I don't like a 4-inch device or a 5-inch, say I don't like a 5.5-inch Note 2 and I don't like the size, I'm going to say that I don't like it. But then Chris and Paul love the devices. So it's hard. Like some people, that's why Apple have stuck with 3.5 inches for so long, because they thought that that's what they thought and dictated to their customers. That's what you want. This is what you need. But now you're seeing, oh, wait, we can do 4 inches. We can add a whole row of icons, because that's magical and revolutionary to have a whole other row of icons. Like, I've never seen that before in my entire life. I'm not even being sarcastic right now. And they've unveiled that, but where can it go? Like, where does it stop? 5.7 inches is the barrier with the Note 3, maybe 6 inches. But then where are the improvements going to come? Like maybe 4K? Like, can you guys imagine 4K on your phone? That'd be nice on the screen itself.
I mean, right now I can have 2 windows open. I can
Yeah.
click on a link on my email and something else pops up and still read my email while I'm watching the YouTube link or whatever.
Yep.
So I mean, having that resolution, you can use it. I mean,
Yeah.
The last trip that we did, my laptop broke right before we left. For Flash Memory Summit, and I didn't have one on the trip, and I just used my phone, and that's the first time I've ever done that, and I was amazed at how well it worked. Even though I did borrow Chris brought like 3 laptops, but I mean, really, I didn't use it that much. So.
But imagine now taking to mind everything we've talked about, and imagine if Microsoft were able to release a 5.5, 5.8 inch device with Nokia's Devices and Services division that runs Windows 8. Like, why can't they do that? Imagine if, because again, you're running everything off of Android. Imagine running everything off Windows. It is like a laptop. You're just taking a 5.7 inch laptop around.
If I could get my Outlook and my OneNote into a phone, like with a decent screen size, I don't even care how much it costs.
It's very funny that you say that, because earlier this week, actually I think it was middle of last week, there's rumors going around that Nokia is working on what they call the Lumia 1520, and it is a 6-inch phablet that will have a native OneNote app on it.
Oh, OneNote's amazing.
Yeah, it won't be like, it'll be like a really native like x86 OneNote app. Like,
yeah, throw Outlook on there, and I don't even care what the rest of it's about. I want it.
I think I think you'll probably see that before Christmas.
I hope so.
Well, here's another technology to kind of throw in the mix. We all have a certain Intel engineer on our Facebook, and he keeps talking about the Dragon Slayer.
Dragon Slayer, yes.
That is Bay Trail. Intel and Microsoft have always had a very good relationship, and we actually saw a Bay Trail benchmark leak out.
I did that yesterday.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think maybe a device that's about the size of my Note 2, running real Windows, not that that tablet Windows thing. That could probably pull me away from Google.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, Windows, it's like native for most of us. We've grown up with it. I mean, sure, when I was a kid, we had like Apple IIs at school, but at some point, middle school, we converted over to Windows, and we've just always known Windows. So.
Yes.
Well, and being able to use your programs and move seamlessly from one device to the other. And, I really see Intel and Microsoft, it seems like they'd almost jump off the cliff together. I mean, you're always going to see that partnership between them. It's like they're against the world. And once Intel really starts developing like they're starting to do now with Bay Trail, once they really start focusing on mobile like they have been, but as it starts to pay off, I really don't think anyone can out-engineer Intel that processors. I mean, I just don't believe it.
Well, the benchmark T's was a Bay Trail chip, and you got to consider these are just engineering samples. This is nothing close to a consumer model. They were matching 2010 Core 2 Duo performance from a smartphone, from a chip that uses 3 or 4 watts of power. That's incredible. If they could make a Nokia device that had Windows 8 on it, and you could give people performance from a PC from 2 or 3 years ago. That's that really you're only running like maybe like you said, like maybe Outlook, maybe Facebook or something. You're not running huge apps like you are on PC.
What percentage of computers are that old anyway that people use every single day?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I've got an X79, a 3930K. I do not need it. I can do it. I can do the same thing on a 920 and probably even a Q6600. My everyday use.
Yep. Yep. Well, I could do everything I do on a smartphone, really. I can plug up my smartphone to a monitor, and I can do a Bluetooth keyboard. That's all I need. If I have access to my Gmail account and Chrome, which I only use Chrome and Gmail, so as long as I have a Google device, Microsoft could do that. Microsoft could come out and they could actually just in one device change everything. They could do an Apple and actually change everything, because Apple can't do that, won't do that. They don't have the engineers behind them, and Intel may be partnered with Apple for some things, like their MacBook side of things. But Microsoft, like you said, they'll jump off a cliff together. If Microsoft said to Intel, we want Bad Trial exclusive to us, and we don't want to give you any money for it, but we just want it exclusive, they would do it. If Microsoft said we're going to release this device, XYZ device, it's going to do XYZ features.
Well, look at the Ultrabook. There's no clear statement. We are together, and we're after Apple. I mean, when they came out with the Ultrabook spec, that's them, Microsoft and Intel coming together and teaming up on Apple. I mean, it's the writing's on the wall. They're not trying to hide it.
No, that's right.
Well, Intel makes the chips for Apple, so they could probably care less if Microsoft surpasses them. Because they're winning either way, so that's like the best position to be in. Speaking of Ultrabook, there was quite a bit of Ultrabook news that came out at IFA, and a majority of those Ultrabooks, even though it's not in the specs, use M.2 SSDs, and we've really hit M.2 pretty hard at TweakTown. We've got benchmarks of several different products that are going into these devices from the factory. The SanDisk A110 we posted a full review of already, and that's over 700 megabytes a second. I guess I can't really pitch this off to anyone. This is kind of my own little thing, but I've kind of thought about this a little bit. If you're getting 700 megabytes a second from, say, a Lenovo notebook, there's not going to be a lot of incentive to go upgrade your SSD. What do you think about third party, Paul?
Oh, third party and OEM solutions like that, I think M.2 is going to be the end of that. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, because that kind of bandwidth we're not even using on my 3930K or a Xeon system. Nobody, a typical consumer is not going to use that pretty much ever.
Even getting close to 100 megabytes a second, like most people only have gigabit Ethernet at home, and even don't even have that. So, I transfer from a NAS in the corner over there to these SSDs. I've got all SSD system here, and I transfer everything at 95 megabytes a second. For me to do a full upgrade to be able to transfer internally at 400 megabytes a second, I'm talking thousands of dollars to upgrade that. So the general consumer, it's not worth it. What? I stream everything now these days. I don't transfer, I stream. So that's where, to me, I don't know, I'm not storage, but I think that's where everything will change. Like, it's not about transferring. Back in the day, you had LANs and you would transfer everything, and you would leach tons and tons of data. Now you have that data and you just stream the data. Everyone can use Wi-Fi these days. Look at Wi-Fi like .ac. That's huge. Like, if I can transfer 30, 40, 50 megabytes a second over Wi-Fi, give me that, please. Give me my SSDs and give me that with streaming, and I'm very nice.
Yeah, see, you say that now, but you just wait. Here in
4K.
Probably
4K changed me.
In a week, maybe a week and a half, I'm gonna have an article about 40 gigabit Ethernet and 56 gigabit per second InfiniBand, and we'll see what you say about your streaming after I show you some
Oh
of
no,
that.
I will say something. I'll say it in an email, Chris. I'll say,
There
hey,
it
Chris,
is.
this is what you're going to be sending me.
There's my show and tell. This is what Chris is talking about. Chris, tell us
So
what that is.
tell us what that can do. Tell us what that can do.
That's a Mellanox ConnectX-3 VPI card, and
I just want to point out Paul's eyebrows there. Just watch it. You see them there? He's like, yeah.
This is sexy. This thing is as fast as it possibly gets. I mean, it's ridiculous.
well,
Go ahead, Chris.
actually, Mellanox makes another version that uses PCI Express 3.0, 16 lanes. Like the card that you just held up is the VPI card. It only uses 8, but they actually make a 16-lane card.
But this saturates 8.
Yeah, it pretty much hits everything 8's got to give. The 16 card, using both the ports, will do around 100 gigabit per second. So
Wow.
think about all the bandwidth that goes into your high-end video card, but being able to transfer that through the network.
Yeah.
And
It's
of course,
almost unimaginable.
That's where things like this come in.
Okay, here's a question. How hot do they run? If you're transferring 100 gigabit for an hour straight, does it get hot?
Well, that's a test I haven't done yet, but they don't get that hot. It's passive cooling.
Yeah, it's passive cooling, but in servers, it's 200 LFM is pretty standard. So I mean, it's got a lot of air going over it. But like Chris said, it almost looks like there's heat sinks on the connectors the way they're designed.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question. Since we've got the storage guys here, if you were to take that item, step into a time machine, and take it back 20 years, where would we be today?
Okay.
If you went to a company 20 years ago with that, where would we be today? Look at both of them jumping. Where would we be today?
I was going to be a smartass. I was going to kind of be a smartass with that and be like, well, I would just have a card in my hand that no one would know what to do with because PCI Express wasn't around 20 years ago. But according to
a whole PC back.
So according to the Prism documents, the entire continent of Africa is only 40 gigabit to the rest of the world. And that card Paul has does 56.
This is faster than the speed of the entire continent of Africa's internet combined.
Now for people who are watching at home, we can actually set it. People who are watching at home and don't know what Chris was referring to there, Prism is the NSA whistleblower, Edward Snowden. He leaked out all this information. So obviously the whole continent of Africa, 40 gigabit, and you've got that in a single card that you hold in your hand.
It'll from my server to my computer is faster than the whole continent of Africa.
Does that make you feel powerful?
Yeah, it's like, bam, there goes 3 gigabytes.
You should take your PC over to Africa and become like maybe TweakTown ISP. I don't know, TTISP. That'd be alright.
Yeah, we could become our own ISP over there if we wanted to.
Yeah. We didn't really plan on bringing up Mellanox in that card, but we should say that that technology it's not just about ridiculous bandwidth.
For storage.
They've got that bandwidth that's about the latency.
Okay.
And this is top shelf data center technology. I mean, that card it's about $1,200, and the switches that I have from Mellanox, they're around 25 to 28,000. So it's not something you're gonna grab at home, but
yeah,
you know what?
Even
if
in the data center, they don't use this commonly at all. I mean, they're still around gigabit and 10. So we're on the cutting edge though.
Yeah, but here I gotta plug this article because at some point I have to write an article about just you going to eBay and picking up a couple cards for like couple generation old cards for like $60 and a switch for $500 or $600 and just building an insane network in your house that it's 40 to 56 times faster than what you have right now. So
but then that comes into the issue of you needing a system or a NAS with SSDs. You can't use mechanical hard drives when you're talking that kind of speed.
Well, like I said, it's about latency too. So, and I mean, you remember back on our LAN party days, like latency was everything. You know, your ping time. Hell, TweakTown started because of ping times on dial-up modems with Cameron in 1998, 1999. So, but yeah, I mean, honestly, for most of the people, spending $1,000 on a pretty ridiculous network isn't going to happen. But there's a few people out there like Paul and Charles and Anthony and I, and that's just what we do. So, and you learn from it. Yeah, you learn from doing it, and then the next thing you're like teaching companies and that sort of thing how to implement the technology. So you learn from home, and you take it on the road.
That's right.
That's good.
Yeah, let's get back to IFA coverage.
The last bit, we've got two last bits before we finish up. We've just got a bit of a talk about the newer Zeus products that were unveiled at IFA. They unveiled two. We talked about it before, the UX 301 ZenBook, but they also unveiled the Transformer Pad TF701T, which is a new tablet which has a 10.1-inch 2560 by 1600 panel. But that also is driven by NVIDIA's Tegra 4 SoC. So we should be looking at some pretty insane performance. We posted a video a couple of days ago of Tegra 4, and it can handle pretty much 1600p at 30 FPS, which is impressive because Tegra 4, with its GPU, I think it's 96 core GPU, GeForce GPU, can do tessellation. So that takes a lot of the strain away from computation on the GPU. But that's also capable of driving 4K from HDMI, which is, we're seeing everything go 4K these days. What do you guys think? New tablet, 4K capable. Are you going to buy a tablet and a smartphone with 4K, Chris?
Honestly, so I bought my kids a couple tablets, a couple of the like $100 tablets a couple years ago, and they're sitting over here. They don't get used. We have a second generation iPad, and that gets used for Angry Birds and as a remote control to my existing Pioneer receivers. And I don't feel it. I kind of knew going into it when I bought them that they weren't really going to be used, and my phone, my Galaxy Note, kind of overshadowed all that for me personally.
I couldn't agree more. With tablets, I'm in a lot of the same boat. I mean, I really can't do a lot more on a tablet than I can do on that phone.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's
why the sales of tablets are slipping pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, they drove up really quick because they were on the heels of the netbook market, and the netbook market was birthed out of people wanting a smaller device, and then that just exploded and went huge, and then it dropped sharply, and then it was replaced by tablets or the iPad, and it went up and stayed up for a while, but now it's dropping sharply now. Yeah. Because again, you guys are using a 5.5-inch device. Like, what more can you do? It's not easy to use a tablet. I think that's where Google Glass and stuff like that will come in, where Google Glass direct me to Best Buy, Google Glass direct me to KFC. You're not going to get a tablet. Hold on, I'll dock it into my car. I'll enable 4G. I'll turn on GPS. I can just slap on my glass, which you're probably already on, and go. I think that's the wearable computing sector is going to kill. It's going to be the new. Personally, the wearable computing sector will replace tablets and probably partially smartphones.
And I kind of agree with you on that. I mean, I have like the first gen Nexus 7, and then I have a 10-inch Toshiba, and the Toshiba was actually one of the nicest tablets, Android tablets on the market when I bought it. I rarely use it for anything other than controlling my home theater system. Like Chris said, that's it. It sits by the couch, and
well, you have to be careful with them. I mean, it's just not conducive to getting out and doing stuff,
Yes, and that's a really big thing too. Like, I don't take mine. I have a case on it, and I don't even take it outside.
Yeah. So my Nexus 7, the new one I can take around. The old one wouldn't fit in my pockets comfortably, but the new one isn't actually too bad. But that's the problem with tablets, is that they stay in your house and they become a device. Like my tablets now, when my niece and nephew come around, they're 14 and 15. Hey, Anthony, do you have a tablet I can use? Here you go. They can use Facebook, they can play games, but you can't do anything serious on them. That's where I think Google Glass, imagine Chris, you driving around or on your 4x4 and you wanting to record stuff. You don't need to do that in Note 2. You could give us a full, from Chris's point of view, from Google Glass in 720p that uploads directly to Google and then share a link. That's the next step. Instead of, I'm at a concert or I'm at somewhere like this, you could just be wearing it and just, here you go, look at this.
That's like these new smartwatches.
Yeah,
I mean, that's going to be the biggest fad ever. I don't think smartwatches will get much penetration. Watch me be proven wrong horribly. But I think it's like you say is, things like Google Glass are, why would you need that?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
like I actually.
Okay, if you think Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that I'm
breaking up
actually
a little
kind of.
bit.
I just wanted to say that I'm kind of excited to see your first Nine Inch Nails concert recorded from Google Glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys think I post some videos now. You just wait till I get Google Glass. Like, it'll be... I may do
remember
like
to
a
turn it off
whole
when you go to the
day.
bathroom. Please remember to turn it off when you go to a bathroom. Like, just imagine if you're live streaming from a concert. Oh, I need to go to the toilet. Run off. Look down. Yeah, I'm all good. Oh, wait. Live stream? Oh.
Or you can be like, record paint dry. You just recording ridiculous stuff at
Believe
that point.
It would be a live stream. There would be a...
a day in the life. You know what I'm actually waiting for? I personally want someone to, and I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet, is to get Google Glass and do a Truman Show or an Ed TV where they wear it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and someone subscribes to their life. Could you imagine someone doing that and just their day-to-day stuff? It'd be like a personal, real-life Big Brother. It would actually be pretty cool. Like if you actually got a house filled with people and you could interchange between live cams and you were watching their live cams. People love Big Brother. Big Brother is massive all across the world. That's the kind of stuff that I see coming from that. Boxing, football, race car driving, and Formula One. Everyone having Google Glass, and you can switch between your drivers from your smartphone. Click and watch live cams.
That's
awesome. The future. To me, that's the future.
If I could see the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, when he goes and throws the ball.
Yeah, from his point of view, and then you'd be able to see, like, it would be able to detect where he's throwing it, so then it would play to the cameras that are near it, and you would actually get
coming at him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that'd be awesome.
It's going to revolutionize a lot of things.
So now you take that and you pair it with your Oculus Rift.
Yes, that's it. That's where I think Oculus Rift will eventually do kind of like an augmented reality, maybe, where they'll attach a camera to the front of the Oculus Rift and you would see what's in front of you. So they could do something like that. Like imagine paintball. So you're in a paintball field, but they could grass it like you're in Afghanistan and it's Battlefield 4. But the camera is just picking up the environment in front of you, and then it's relaying and rendering something else inside. It's just using augmented reality. So instead of you seeing a grassy knoll, you're seeing a building. So they can build a door next to it, and you'd physically go and touch the door because the webcam can see the door handle. That kind of stuff, that's only a couple of years away. All it needs is a couple of people on Kickstarter, with an idea. This is where these guys came from, and that's it.
Well,
you're off.
You're actually getting Kickstarter in Australia in a couple days, so...
I know. See, I could actually do it. There you go.
Yeah.
I'd do it. Half of them are doing a run-off with the money. I'm not going to do that, I promise.
Well, just don't use PayPal. They're locking down a lot of people's accounts.
Yeah, I know. PayPal is shocking sometimes. Yes. And the last story that we're going to have is...
We'll have to do a separate story.
Yeah, that needs a separate story. The last topic that we have for today is mainly for Chris and Paul. It is just a quick talk about the Intel K series of SSDs that are just a rumor or a possibility. What do you guys think about overclockable SSDs? Is it going to be something that's going to come out? Are we going to see more than 10% improvement? Are we going to see water cooling in SSDs, liquid nitrogen? Is it going to be something that is going to be in the next overclocking competitions at Computex?
I like watching them perk up. It's kind of fun.
You want to know my opinion? You may not. A lot of people may not agree with me. I think it kind of signals that maybe they're trying to catch some type of buzz, or
Yeah.
create some kind of buzz around SSDs that right now isn't there for a lot of people. A lot of people have switched already, and those who haven't switched are probably people who will not switch. We're getting into OEM with SSDs. When you go and you buy a computer and have an SSD in there. So they're needing to add some type of value or something to attract more people. I think
The way that I see it is maybe like, it's like if you go back, say, 5 years ago with motherboards, they could overclock, but they didn't talk about it. Gigabyte didn't really push it, Asus didn't push it, and now it's like, we've got OC boards, OC Force, we've got this, we've got that, we've got liquid nitrogen support, we've got water cooling support. Is that where you think, like you said, they need that buzz where it's like, oh, Intel have broken some SSD record with 3D Mark, on our overclockable SSD?
No.
I
Here's
don't get it. I think
here's
it's
why here's why that's never going to happen. Because one, it's storage. It's your operating system. This isn't a video card. When this crashes, it's not, you just hit the reset button. Like you just lost something.
Yeah,
And
your kid's
Yeah,
first
but I'm
steps.
talking more about the buzz. Like what I mean is that they're going to do it just to. It's like if the GTX Titans on liquid nitrogen. No one does that, but the buzz that creates sells GeForce GPUs at lower segments. That's more what I mean. Like Intel can go, our SSDs are overclockable. This is what we did, just to push SSDs more into the market, or maybe sell Intel's SSDs, because no one buys. I don't know anyone with an Intel SSD. Everyone I know has Corsair. Every single person I know has Corsair, apart from one that might have Samsung or something. That's what I mean, like
Samsung's
that
really big.
buzz.
well, so if you look at what kind of leaked out from, I guess it wasn't really a leak. They had some stuff on display. So they went from 83 megahertz to 100 megahertz on the flash. Intel, well, first they actually have their own flash fab, so they know that the flash can do that. Um, the performance difference wasn't that great. So right now, all right, let's say we're getting 500 megabytes a second. It goes to 520, which is about what it went to in the tests that they showed. Who cares? It's 20 megabytes a second when
If you're not
you've got 500. And the other thing is, if it's just limited to 83 to 100 megahertz, I doubt it's going to be any big difference for the endurance of the flash. It's probably not going to raise the temperature of the flash too much, which is something that we don't worry about too much right now. But as you know from the reviews, we bought the thermal image camera specifically for the reason of next generation flash and TLC heat from the controllers, because the controllers are going to have this air correction control, and it's going to make the controllers hotter. We're already up to 90C on one controller that's out right now.
And that
And
makes man die.
yeah, let's say you left your SSD in the car and it was a hot day out, and you come back and turn your notebook on, and your data's gone, or it's gone a week from when that event occurred. So heat is an issue, but going from 83 megahertz to 100 megahertz isn't that big a deal. I think honestly, with what we've seen from the IMFT, the Micron Intel 20 nanometer flash, this is maybe a chance for them to kind of get back some speed that they lost, moving from 25 nanometer to 20, because there's a massive performance drop with some controllers. And the ONFI spec, I'm sure, probably dictates somewhere in there it says 83 megahertz, or I don't know for sure. There's probably something in there that says what speed that's going to run at. So this is going to be Intel's chance to come back and say, well, look, we found a way to give you back some performance that we took away when we went to 20 nanometer.
But if let's say they do release a K series of SSDs, and they let the consumer itself overclock, does that mean that they're just, well, that means that they're just deliberately holding back their SSDs and then letting you overclock them?
No, because there's a lot of concerns. You're really putting data at risk, and you know, normal people don't replicate their data nearly enough. You know, if you lose an SSD, like if you're just some guy and you know you have a bunch of stuff on your computer, you overclock your SSD because hey, it's cool, and then you forget about it, and a year later you have a year's worth of videos on there, and you have your kid's first step, your wedding, you know, pictures, things that can't be replaced. That's like a tornado coming and hitting your house.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're going to lose things, and they're even expressly already saying that you know you're going to be at risk for that. So I mean, I don't know.
You know,
I
it's
think they
For me, it's not worth it.
it's
might
funny
even
you.
have to.
Oh, sorry, but
No,
it's
no,
funny
you're right.
you would say that because the first NAS I ever reviewed, when I got finished with it, of course it was the first NAS I ever owned at that point, and it was still set at RAID 0, and it did have my first son's first pictures on it, and like maybe 3 years worth of stuff, and I just always assumed that I had put it back to RAID 5, but I didn't. It was at RAID 0, and one of those drives died.
And
So
that's
we
it.
lost, I don't know, the first 3 years of my son's pictures, my oldest son.
Wow.
So
You know, here in
and
Kansas,
it is like the tornado, and my wife, you know, probably once a year she doesn't let that go.
you know what? I'll tell you. Here in Kansas, of course, people get hit by tornadoes, and I've known a lot of people that have lost homes to tornadoes. But the one thing that they always say is you can replace everything, but you can't replace the memories and things like that, and that is data. They can't get their pictures back. They can't get things like that back. They don't care about losing their TV or their couch or their car. A year later, they don't care. 10 years later, they don't care. But they still remember losing those pictures and that video and things like that. So, you know, being the enterprise guy I am, I'm always going to say, don't play around with your data.
No.
And to me, giving consumers, you know, who almost never really are taking the steps they need to protect their data, I don't agree. I don't think it's a good idea.
I think that's why for me, I don't know, you guys obviously on my Facebook, I upload so much to Facebook because it's almost like a free cloud service. I dump it on Facebook, my friends get to see it. If I ever have a problem, my pictures are there. Sure, they're not in heaps good quality, like it's not just me uploading full res images to Dropbox, but they're there. And then I have Dropbox, and I have a QNAP NAS, and I have it backed up to my QNAP NAS, and I have it backed up to Dropbox, and then I have it on Facebook. I've lost data before. I lost about 7 years of stuff, and I'm like, never again. That's why I invested into a QNAP NAS, and that's been on 24 hours a day for 5 years.
Well,
And I know that it's going to die soon, so I've slowly been pushing stuff to Dropbox.
I keep a 4 terabyte in a safe deposit box for my
That's what I want to do. I want to actually do that
Off-site.
soon.
off-site data
Well,
backup.
that's a really good idea. Last year, my home burnt down.
Swap it out.
I used to own a photography business, and I lost a lot of photos that I can never replace. That some of my best works ever are gone, and because I didn't have them backed up off site.
Yeah.
See, if you look here, this is one of I swap them out. Here's one of my drives I just got back because I just put the new, what says do not discard. But you notice I just unscrew the PCB. That's like my security.
Okay, wow. What size do you use for a backup?
Well, I just switched from 2 terabytes to 4 terabytes now.
Okay.
Because I have more data now. But I swap them out every 6 months.
I've been thinking about doing that. I've been talking to my wife about just having an external drive that stays off site, even at my parents' place or her mum's place, something like that, where it's not near me.
Well, you know, there's a company out there also that makes like these disaster-proof hard drives, IOSafe.
Mm-hmm.
They're not,
Chris has a lot of experience with them.
I do too. I've actually burnt down 4 of their hard drives, and that was the only. Well, I had a couple PCs that survived the fire, like the storage survived, but the IOSafe, both of them survived. And I mean, I've subjected them to 4 hours in fire, like just straight, like building a bonfire, tossing them in, letting it burn, and the hard drive was still recoverable after it was over.
Did it feel good to deliberately put a hard drive into a fire? Did you smile?
Yes. Well, what it was, I got one of the first SSD units they had back in the day, and I think it was like a $600 or $700 drive at the time, and it felt really good to like light a fire, toss it in, and walk away.
Did you feel like you were walking away in slow motion, like in the movies when there's a big explosion behind the good guy? He's like just walking away like,
No,
yeah.
because actually I used a little too much gasoline and waited between the time I lit it, and fire surrounded me, and I had to run.
Yeah, so you put your arms up in the air and screwed and ran. Yeah,
Yes.
fair enough.
Don't try this at home, children.
Yeah.
Don't try this.
Warning.
Like,
All right, I think that's it, guys.
Yes.
I think I've had a really good time. I hope that everyone that watches this has had a good time. If there's anything that you want changed, or if there's anything you think that we've done wrong or that you want to see more of, did you like having Paul and Chris on talking about storage and just in general, let us know. We want tons of comments on this. As much as you guys want to give us input on, we're willing to take on. We just hope that everyone had a good time. We had a good time.
Yeah, I did.
I'm happy with it. That's good.
It's
Yep.
good.
All right, I thought it was fun. Thanks, guys.
Tune in next week.
Yeah, next week.
Thanks.